yesterday, we now work in 10 different African countries talking about outcomes that are facilitated by the government based on the will of people to change. And here in Nigeria, we absolutely see the potential for a new chapter in this country's history, but that will be based on the choices that people like yourselves make and the leadership that President-elect Buhari puts to the task of making change happen in this country. At the delivery side of things, what we find is that on the scientific side, there are many things that really, really matter. As Chris was saying, how you make the tough choices on what those priorities are. And as you all were seeing yourselves, it's very hard to make those choices. But what's clear in the marathon, as Chris was saying, is that you have to have an iron focus, because events, dear events, as Tony likes to say, will take over the days of government extremely easily. And so what are those 3, 4, 5 things that this government absolutely commits to its people to get done? With no wavering, with weekly emails, with monthly stock takes, with quarterly progress all along the way, what are those things that this government really wants to get done? So that choice of the first we call P, priorities, is hugely important. It's hugely important to direct the people who come in to these new mechanisms, delivery units and the like. It's hugely important, as Chris was saying, to the civil service that needs instructions. And I tend to agree. It's not about cutting out, perhaps in some cases, but it's about enabling and empowering the government to do the right thing. So that first P is about priorities. And this is extremely difficult to choose, but it's the most important thing that a new leader can do. The second thing is around planning. What exactly are you going to get done in that marathon race in your 4 years, 10 years, or beyond? And it feels to me that in Nigeria, a country that I'm coming to learn a little bit about, that those plans may well exist, but many of them may not be realistic as to what is possible, particularly in the new financial context that you all are facing. So what are those realistic plans? Still ambitious, but realistic as to what can get done, and ensuring that you have the real political will to continue in that long race, because nothing gets done very, very quickly. But I'll come to that in a second. The final P, as we say, of the 3 Ps on the science side, is about performance management. And every system has a different way to manage performance and different mechanisms to do it. I myself am a fan of performance contracts, or of the kind of performance email that Dr. Fayemi was referring to. Some systems, and ones, for example, we work very closely with Paul Kagame, gets his ministers together, they do exercise in the morning in a retreat, and then he brings them one by one onto stage to give them their grade every quarter. It is a sight to behold to see what happens when you get low marks in Rwanda. That being said, every system has its own way of seeing how you want to do that performance contracting and that performance management. And some of it is rightly kept to closed doors. Nonetheless, it's hugely important that there is a strict system by which you keep track of what you're doing. Because again, events, dear events, will get in the way. So those are the sort of some of the key fundamentals, and I too could wax lyrical about all of the machinations of how to make the science of things work. But I thought I'd spend a little bit more energy on the art. And the art is probably the stage that you all are at today, as there's a couple of weeks before, or I should say a couple of days before inauguration, and many substantial choices need to get made in the coming period. And that is often about the art, and the art will be important for the next 4 years and beyond. The art is about making good appointments and making sure that you have technocrats who are technically capable based on merit in the right positions. It is about ensuring that counsel comes from solid sources, that people are technically capable of providing counsel at all levels of government. It's also about figuring out what that first 100 days looks like. That first 100 days sometimes has been referred to as the honeymoon, but it's also the time that a new administration signals what it's going to do for the country. Those appointments are a very big signal. Governments like the ones that we work with, including most recently in Mozambique, the new president there decided on a set of key ministers that are technocratically very capable. It sent a huge boon to the marketplace looking at investing in Mozambique to know who that new set of ministers was that this new president appointed. That kind of signaling, though not quite yet an outcome, is almost as important as the outcomes that are going to come. It isn't an outcome quite yet, though. But what this administration chooses to do in that first period is hugely important. And the sequence by which outcomes are planned out are also hugely important. And it may well be, as my colleague Lord Mandelson was saying yesterday, a very good time to make some pretty hard decisions whilst you're still in a honeymoon period. Those decisions will become harder and harder to take as the months and years pass. He mentioned one yesterday that I tend to agree with, but that's very much up to you all as to whether or not fuel subsidies is the kind of thing that should be one of those early decisions that this administration takes. Hard, but extremely required from what we understand in this kind of context. And so that is part of the art that needs to be combined with the mechanisms of delivery. And it's extremely important to continue that art, and part of the art is about communications. And I'll probably give you a little bit of why. As Lord Mandelson was saying, it's not only about ensuring that you talk to people during a campaign and convince them with promises. You also need to be telling them about what your outcomes are and explaining some of those difficult trade-offs. Because this question of prioritization results in some things not being done, because you require focus onto the things that the government can do, you have to be communicating about how much you are getting done along the way. And so thus thinking quite strategically about, this is what we will do in the first 100 days, this is what we promise to do in the first year, and month by month saying what's actually done is hugely important in complement to the actual outcomes. So with that, I'm probably going to stop here. We have reams and reams of experience ranging from Rwanda to Guinea to Sierra Leone and Liberia, Kenya, Mozambique and the like, all across the continent, looking at the different ways in which delivery and outcomes can be done. The reason why we as an organization were created by Mr. Blair when he left office was because he came to Africa and believed in the promise, but he didn't see the implementation happening. And there's a new generation of reforming leaders, just like President-elect Buhari, who were struggling to actually get their systems to change. And that's what we've been helping them with along the way, with the science of delivery and indeed the art as well, with the support of people like Lord Mandelson. So I'll leave it there, but it has been a great privilege for us to get to spend some time with you all, and we wish you a good dose of luck, as Lord Mandelson said yesterday.
A good dose of luck indeed. Professor Adamlekun, can you reflect on these diverse and rich perspectives from all over?
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we're fortunate hearing about the experiences in Malaysia, UK. I think I'm familiar with it, and the Pakistan experience you mentioned. I'm going to make some references to what you've said, but also, as the moderator had hinted, I'd also traveled a bit and I'd seen how some countries handle this kind of aid. But actually, let me start with Nigeria. Delivery. Dr. Joaba's thesis on pockets of excellence, if you like, pockets of performance, and he focused on IFRS and NAFDA, among the examples he gave. I think everybody here, not the countries, though it's not an expert sheet, will agree that NAFDA under Akinlumi performed, delivered. IFRS under Ifoko delivered. So we really don't, of course, we learn from others, but we also ought to be aware that we can do it. And in fact, we've done it. All we need to do is to multiply and also ensure that those circumstances, like analyzed what? I was hearing for the first time that she participated in selecting her board. But I can tell you, it was not that made it easy for her to influence the board. She worked day and night. I interviewed her, and I can confirm that all the plaudits that she has had are all well deserved. So if we start from there, that we've done it, we can do it, I think it will be useful, and we just add what we've listened to. I take you to Botswana, and again, it was the governor-elect for Kaduna State who made the point about budget and planning being together. Actually, you can say worldwide. If you want a good example, it will be Botswana. Indeed, in 2008, a study was done. 13 countries that had grown at rapid rate and reduced poverty. Out of 13 countries, one of them is Botswana, the only African country in that list. So, but I want to say that the example, the point he raised, and I hope he succeeds in his, well, actually he's the governor, so it's not even going to be in the cabinet, but I know he has influence in the party. I think it's an important thing, because what really then happens in the Botswana case, which incidentally I wasn't thinking of Botswana when I made the suggestions of the lecture I gave on May 1st, an annual development performance report. What they do in Botswana is there's an annual report on the implementation of the budget and plan. You know, people say they don't know how budget is implemented, you just know the numbers, you don't know what went into where. There are countries where that monitoring, that reporting, that evaluation is done annually. And I visited Botswana a few times between 87 and 2000, I guess, and actually witnessed it right down to the kind of levels in Malaysia where they go, they call it hotline, where ministers will actually go to village level to listen or to give account and also to listen. But of course, I mean, we are running a federal system. I know that some states do that, but you know, however, so the budget and planning coming together and also reporting, evaluating, monitoring, reporting annually. I don't know whether we want to go, I think we can combine the open day with reporting to National Assembly. Even if the debate there is not thorough, it will then be thrown to the public. Because the advantage of this kind of delivery, monitoring, and assessment is that before 2019, there will have been 3 annual reports. So you won't need transformation ambassadors who will be talking. Citizens will already be familiar with what you have been doing every year. I think it's an extremely important thing, particularly when your transformation ambassadors will also affect your budget. That is reduce the money you have available. The other example I want to give is Brazil. This is a country where a labor leader fought to win election 4 times. It was the first time that he succeeded. What happened? He won the election. The self-selected person won, and she has just won re-election. Why? Based on performance. And one area of performance that I'm sure some people are familiar with it, is poverty reduction. But it was done, you see, the way all this MDG thing we are doing here, you know, it has to be done with thoroughness. You know, the point people are making about data, you know, you organize it, you monitor it. That is, when you say you target the poor and you give them, you can call it cash transfer, but it's conditional cash transfer. In Nigeria here, we call it by that name, but there is no condition. But there, they were able to do it, and at the end of every year, up to the first term, by the end of his first term, people literally knew he was going to be re-elected, and it happened. his successor was elected and re-elected. So I think, again, I'm just giving the example of one program, and that's not the only program he did. He got macroeconomic stability right, business environment, and all of other things you do. But I think we can use a concrete example on which he paid attention and ensured that things were delivered. I think finally I want to, since I was asked to give some lessons of experience. The last country I visited in the bank was Korea in 2004. And I was amazed at the level of ICT penetration. At that time, Korea had become one of the top 10 countries using ICT for development, for running their government in education and in all the other areas. I noticed that is in the APC manifesto, but I think it's a tool that can be used to fast-track delivery, whether it's in education. In any case, one state is already trying that. I'm talking of Osun State. Sure. But at the national level, the federal government can set, how do you call it, examples. And then all the states will buy it again. So the ICT-driven development, if you want to find a place to learn, in my experience, is Korea. Finally, Mr. Moderator, in the program you gave us, and when I was told I was going to be involved in this, I gave some thoughts to what you call people there, whether people will pay attention, they need to pay attention during this session to quick points. And of course, you won't be surprised, Lord Mandelson's point about unbundling NNPC and taking a clear, firm decision on fuel subsidy. I call it quick win, but it means it's a decision that needs to be taken quickly. Whichever decision you take, that's to happen within those first 3 months, or even as soon as you come to power and announce, or the speech you are going to make on May 29. The second one is on anti-corruption. I was in the corruption session, and I was a bit disappointed that I made it clear that the president-elect has already promised an anti-corruption strategy to be delivered to the public before the end of his first 100 days. Now, that has not happened before in this country. From the World Bank, I think it was Justice Akoli, we tried to advise him about strategy, but don't let us go into that. That is a quick win. If by the end of before the end of the first 3 months, there is an anti-corruption strategy that has been prepared in a participatory manner, because the government has one which they were trying to fulfill some UN convention, and they said they have done some participation. So that will be taken on board. But the kind of panel that we have today brought out quite some good ideas, which I'm sure the rapporteurs will have captured. That strategy will ensure that fighting corruption is not done in an ad hoc manner.